This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and I recently got a video request from my friend who's been keeping me supplied in talking books. He'd kind of like to hear a comparison of how the first solid-state talking book machine sounds versus the tube model, so I thought we'd accommodate him. And to throw in a little extra, we'll also listen to the very last 1990s talking book machine. This is the one that we repaired in a recent video. I got my new 6CM6 tube in the mail from a seller off of eBay, and it helped its performance a great deal. Alright, we'll start out with an 8 RPM record. Yes, 8 RPM.
.34 by Jill Marie. Riders West by Ernest Haycox, published by Warner Books Incorporated. Copyright 1934 by Jill Marie Haycox, renewed 1962 by Jill Marie Haycox.
And that popping is in the record, not in the machine.
Studios of the American Printing House for the Blind, 1973. For special distribution as authorized by Act of Congress under Public Law 89-522 and with permission. Read by Charlie Ryle. Please be careful in your handling of these recordings. Chapter 1. The Past is Dead. Beyond the blurred car window, the land lay dark and formless and unvarying.
Alright, let's go to a 16 RPM. And in my opinion, the 16 RPM would sound better.
The Caper of the Golden Bulls, a novel of suspense by William P. McGivern. Copyright 1966 by William P. McGivern. Recorded for the Library of Congress in the Talking Book Studios of American Foundation for the Blind, Incorporated, with the kind permission of the publishers, Dodd Mead and Company, solely for the use of the blind. Read by Guy Sorrell. Listeners are requested to keep these talking book discs clean and in order.
And that was a model AE4 tube talking book player from 68, which would have been the last year. Sometime in 68 is when they released the plastic-cased AE5 model transistorized player, and that one was not a bad one either. They didn't really start getting junky until, I think, the A72. That was the little small plastic case model. Okay, this one here is a model E1 from either late 65 or early 66. This must be a rare one because nobody I've talked to has ever heard of it. They didn't even know they made such a thing. And if you look on the history page on the Talking Book Library website, they mention the first solid-state transistor one as being the plastic-cased AE5. They don't mention anything about this one, so I feel like this one was made in very limited numbers. Like the tube model, it's in a wooden case, built like a tank, no printed circuit boards, it's all point-to-point wiring, uses all germanium transistors, it has all original parts in it. On the side we have our controls for off-on volume and tone and a headphone jack. One handy feature about this one is it has an automatic cutoff at the end of the record. You can hear the little micro switch, and I need to adjust that or disable it because it sometimes cuts off before the end of the record. Alright, like with the other one, we'll do a 8 RPM and then we'll do a 16 RPM.
Riders West by Ernest Haycox, published by Warner Books Incorporated. Copyright 1934 by Jill Marie Haycox, renewed 1962 by Jill Marie Haycox. Recorded on 5 sides for the Library of Congress in the studios of the American Printing House for the Blind, 1973. For special distribution as authorized by Act of Congress under Public Law 89-522 and with
permission. Tone control.
Read by Charlie Ryle.
That's all the way
Please be careful in
bass position.
these recordings. Chapter 1. The Past is Dead. Beyond the blurred car window, the land lay dark and
Alright, now 16 RPM.
The Caper of the Golden Bulls, a novel of suspense by William P. McGivern. Copyright 1966 by William P. McGivern. Recorded for the Library of Congress and the Talking Book Studios of American Foundation for the Blind, Incorporated, with the kind permission of the publishers, Dodd Mead and Company.
Alright, between the two, I think the tube type one has a warmer tone to it, but this one is still not a bad sounding unit. And for size comparison, there they are side by side. The smaller one is the solid state one. And here's the last one. This is my official library issued talking book player. I think these were introduced in 1990. This one has a 94 date code on it. I don't know when they stopped making them, but talking book magazines on records were phased out at the end of 2000. This has 8, 16, and 33 in variable pitch control, which is a feature the older ones don't have. And on this one, the tone arm is pressed down and moved towards the record rather than lifted. And if you want to find a certain spot on the record, you just hold down the little rectangular portion, and this is the instruction sheet that came with it.
As the record guide. The tone arm has 2 needles. One is currently playing this record. The other is a spare. To switch from a worn needle to the spare, move the tone arm to its resting position.
Now push down on the spring-loaded armrest.
The rest is a small triangular-shaped ridge underneath the tone arm.
Alright, 16 RPM.
The Caper of the Golden Bulls, a novel of suspense by William P. McGivern. Copyright 1966 by William P. McGivern. Recorded for the Library of Congress and the Talking Book Studios of American Foundation for the Blind, Incorporated, with the kind permission of the publishers, Dodd Mead and Company. Solely for the use of the...
Now an 8 RPM record. Speed this up a little bit.
Incorporated. Copyright 1934 by Jill Marie Haycox. Renewed 1962 by Jill Marie Haycox.
And that's wide open on the volume.
For the Library of Congress and the studios of the American Printing House for the Blind, 1973. Or special distribution as authorized by Act of Congress under Public Law 89-522 and with permission. Read by Charlie Ryle. Please be careful in your handling of these recordings. Chapter. Not the slightest doubt of his part in this, answered Ballou. He's not sure he can muster the votes to put his thugs in office, so he's going to use the gun. Townsite removed his...
Well, as you can hear, they all get the job done, but I think out of the 3, the old tube type one has the nicest tone to it. And for a 90s model, this one is built pretty decently, but of course not as well built as the old one. So you be the judge. And just for kicks, this is the A71 talking book record player, which was first introduced in 71. I think starting in 70, the model number designated the model year that it was first introduced, as in A70, A71, A72 for the record players, and the cassette players were model numbered C72, C73, C74, etc. Then there was the C80, and then they switched to the C1, which was short for C81, but that's the model they kept in production until the end of cassette use. This one here is really not a fair comparison because I haven't restored it yet, but it will play a record.
Riders West by Ernest Haycox. Published by Warner Books Incorporated. Copyright 1934 by Jill Marie Haycox. Renewed 1962 by Jill Marie Haycox. Recorded on 5 sides for the Library of Congress in the studios of the American Printing House for the Blind, 1973. For special distribution as authorized by Act of Congress under public...
No, that's not too bad. All right, 16.
The Caper of the Golden Bulls, a novel of suspense by P. McGibbon. Copyright 1966 by William P. McGibbon. Recorded for the Library of Congress in the Talking Book Studios of American Foundation for the Blind, Incorporated, with the kind permission of the publishers.
Yeah, this was the last decent talking book player, in my opinion, the A72. And those of you who were in the talking book program during the 70s and 80s will remember this series. The A72 through A80 was the one that was in a smaller plastic case with the 2 turn latches on the front, and it was smaller than this one. And one feature this one has, and some of the newer ones have too, this jack on the side is for an optional remote control or speed control accessory. The remote control just turns the machine off and on for patrons who have limited mobility, and the speed control would either speed up or slow down the motor. I think they stopped offering the speed control accessory because they found out that slowing the motor down was causing the motor to overheat and burn up because it lowers the frequency. And these motors were designed to operate on 60 hertz, so lowering the frequency would make them run slower and make them run hotter. And here's the CT1 combination record and cassette player, also from the 90s. Not many of these were made either, not in comparison to the separate record player and cassette players, and I think these were mostly sent to institutions. This one here operates on either 120 volts AC or has an optional rechargeable battery pack, which I don't have, and it's probably just as well because it's a proprietary battery that was only used in these machines, and after 20-something years it would be dead by now anyway and wouldn't hold a charge. This has 3-speed operation for the phonograph, 2-speed operation for the cassette player, as well as 4-track playback, and fast forward and reverse for both records and cassettes.
Published by Warner Books Incorporated. Copyright 1934 by Jill Marie Haycox. Renewed 1962
I think this one has a little bit more powerful amplifier in it, is the record player only model.
American Printing House for the Blind, 1973. Renewed 1962 by Jill Marie Haycox. Chapter 1. The Past. Read by Charlie Ryle.
A man, a Frenchman. Tell me about him, Mario, Peter said. And the urgency in his tone brought a cooperative frown to Mario's Tell me about him, Mario, Peter.
And the urgency in his tone brought a cooperative frown to Mario's face.
Let's see if this cassette player still works. Alright, 15/16 IPS cassette. That beep indicates track 1.
Read by Eva Wilhelm. Read by Eva Wilhelm. This magazine contains 94 pages on 4 sides. This magazine is tone indexed. The beginning of each article will be indicated by a beep audible when your cassette player is in fast forward or rewind. If you would like to skip over any
The
remaining
cassette sounds more bold than the record player portion.
Place your cassette player in fast forward until a beep is heard. Stop at that
And on the
point
side we have our track change button if you want to change sides or tracks.
This recorded edition contains
If I press it in,
the print edition except for advertising.
if I press it and release it real quick, it'll just indicate what track we're on.
The blind and physically handicapped.
But if I hold it in, it'll switch to the next track.
Contacted by the producer of this.
Side 2.
$165 million. 24 years old. Thanks to his light, airy troubleshoot camcorders and
Side
cameras.
3.
Tone 6, 4 minutes. Troubleshoot GPS devices. Tone 7, 4 minutes. Troubleshoot at loc.gov.
Okay, we must be at the end. Yeah, this thing has all kind of error beeps and stuff, and I think this mechanism does need a little service. Okay, do we have a stuck tape or what?
You will not be contacted by the producer of this magazine to verify cancellation or change of address. 8 weeks for address change. Page 12, Side 1, Tone 3, 8 minutes. Reviews. Tech Diaries. Our smart computing columnists spent some quality time with computer and computer-related hardware and
When you remove the tape and put it back, it resets the side to track 1.
$1 billion success culture, especially its 10 End of Smart Computing for September 2010. Recorded in the studios of Potomac Talking Book Services Incorporated under subcontract to National Talking Books for the Blind for the Library of Congress, September 2010. Published by Sand Hills Publishing Company, 131 West Grand Drive, P.O. Box 82545, Lincoln, Nebraska 68501. Further reproduction or distribution in other than a specialized format is prohibited. If you experienced any difficulty with your copy of this magazine, please specify the problem on a postcard or letter addressed to Materials Development Division, National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, Washington, D.C. 20542, or send an email message to qas@loc.gov.
Alright, there you go. Just to give you an idea about cassette machines, this is an early one. This is a General Electric 2-speed player recorder. This one was actually offered through the American Printing House for the Blind, but there was also a version that was loaned through the Library of Congress Talking Book Program. There was both a recorder version and a player-only version. There was also a modified 4-track version. In fact, some of these were later modified for 4 tracks. All you'd have to do to accomplish that is install a stereo head and wire in the appropriate switch to switch between whatever track. This one's probably from the early 70s, I'd say. This green thing here is the model C79. This was given to me by a friend. It was actually his library issued tape player, but by the time it wore out, it was so old they didn't want it back. They just sent him a new one and told him he could throw the other one away or do whatever he wanted to with it. So he gave it to me, and it's totally dead. It doesn't work. It's a 2-speed 4-track model with variable speed control and operates on either a internal battery pack or 120 volts, although you're supposed to operate them on the battery as much as possible. you're really only supposed to plug them in for recharging because the batteries can overcharge and decrease the lifespan. This one here is my official library-issued model, the C1, that came out in '81 and was made up until, I think, 2007. It's basically the same thing as this one. And from 2007 until probably around 2013, when magazines on cassette were phased out, they just used the existing supply that was on hand of these. There was also a C80 that looks just like this one, except it had speech compression, which allowed you to actually speed up the recording and it not sound like Donald Duck. So pretty much the C76 all the way on up through the C1 were basically the same machine except for case color, for the exception of the C80 model I mentioned. But as far as cassette players, my favorites are the old GE built models, the Telex models. The C1s weren't that great. Some of them barely worked when they were new. In fact, the one I have, I've had to get several replacements over the years, and when the battery goes dead in one, it won't run on AC either. And as far as battery power, the cassette recorders, or cassette players I should say, they'll run for about 6 hours on a good battery. Now, bringing you up to speed to present day, this is what we have now. This is the digital talking book machine. There's the standard model, which is what this one is, and there's the advanced model with increased navigation features on it. These will also run off of a built-in battery or AC power, and on these you don't have to be cautious about overcharging the battery. It's all computer controlled and you can't overcharge the battery, and on these there's obviously no moving parts to break, so they last a lot longer. I got my first one in 2010 and just had to replace it this year because the battery wouldn't hold a charge, and when the battery gets defective in these, they'll also start doing weird things. So, you know, these seem to hold up better. And the books are mailed in these plastic containers, free matter for the blind or handicapped. You just read a book, and when you're done, you put it back in the container and flip the address card over and send it back to the library, and they'll send you another book. And also, if you're a patron of the library, there's a BARD website where you can download pretty much any book you want on a little thumb drive thing like this. I'm not yet signed up for that website. I need to sign up for that. I have music on this, and this plays music pretty good.
Player on. Audio files. Current position. Folder 1. File 5. Volume down. 100. 74. Time elapsed in file. 25 seconds. Battery charge remaining. Greater than 19 hours.
Obviously, I recorded that off of an old 45 RPM record.
Forward 20 seconds. Forward 1 minute. Forward 5 minutes. New location.
Now on the advanced model, I wouldn't have to wait. I could just go from one file to the next.
Before you first made love to me, you called me.
Forward 20 seconds. Forward 1 minute. New location. Forward 20 seconds.
Till that time has come, that we might live as one. Can I dance with you?
Forward 20 seconds. Forward 1 minute. New location.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, now let's show you this thing for its being used for its intended purpose. Come on, open up here. Trying to do this one-handed. The books they send you from the library come on cartridges like this, and the obvious advantages to these is this medium may not have the nice warm analog sound that the older stuff did, but these cartridges, they don't suffer from the problems that the old analog sources suffered from, as in records getting scratched from wear and abuse, and cassettes getting degrading from wear and abuse, and long extended playings, repeated playings.
A Dangerous Master: How to Keep Technology from Slipping Beyond Our Control by Wendell Wallach. DB 82677. Copyright 2015, Wendell Wallach. Read by J.P. Linton. This book contains 328 pages. Approximate reading time, 20 hours, 50 minutes. This book contains markers allowing direct access.
So that's the newest form of talking book technology, and from what I'm reading, within the next couple of years, they'll have a new digital talking book player that has direct connectivity by Wi-Fi to the internet. So I guess if you end up with one of those players, you can download your books directly to the player instead of having to download them on something like a USB drive or a thumb drive and then plugging it into your existing digital player. So there you go. There's a little, I intended for it to be brief, but it kind of got carried away. Comparison between some of the old forms of talking book technology, and you got to see a little bit of the new technology here. And there actually was also a reel-to-reel machine, and I have one of those somewhere. I couldn't put my hand on it right now if my life depended on it, but it's a modified Sony TC-105A 4-track mono recorder that was sold through the American Printing House. I think those were popular in the late 60s and early 70s, but open reel tape didn't really catch on as well as cassettes and records did, for probably obvious reasons, having to fiddle with the tape and thread it and all that. When a cassette, you could just pop it in the machine and hit the play button. Alright, there you go. Hope you got something out of this, and more to come later.